Hey, you, I was thinking about you. And you know what I was thinking? I was thinking it's time for you to soar. Welcome to It's Time to Soar podcast, Getting Unstuck with me, Coach Katina. I am so glad you're here because I have navigated the waters in corporate America and I failed my first several years because I ran into snags that I didn't even know were there. So I am passionate about making sure you do not stay stuck and that you live your best life and soar to your next level. Today's episode is all about the imposter syndrome. Listen, before we move into this episode, I want to make sure that you have liked, maybe even shared the podcast, and you've got that notification bell turned on so that you get notified when new content arrives. Let's dig right into the content. We're talking about the imposter syndrome. I know you've heard about it a lot. I want to dig into it. So, what you can expect is for me to give you several indicators of whether you're suffering from the imposter syndrome and 5 ways to start getting unstuck from that. So, if it's you in the audience and you can admit that you've suffered from the imposter syndrome, say, hey, that's me in the comments. And if it's you that has no idea what I'm talking about, just say explain. Explain in the comments, put it in the comments. The imposter syndrome is taken from the word imposter. An imposter is a fake, a fraud, a phony, somebody masquerading as someone else. And it became associated with syndrome when realized that people would often have the thought that maybe a promotion was undeserved or that the skills that they had were not enough for wherever they were, for whatever they were doing, and they didn't feel worthy. Imposter syndrome is often associated with fear, fear of being found out, fear of being exposed, fear of being uncovered or left out there or being wrong. And I know that I teach DISC, the DISC personality theory, and I give the assessment, and I do know that there is a conscientious type. Is there anybody out there that's a type C in the DISC profile? The conscientious type, their biggest driver is they do not want to be wrong. So it's not that they have the imposter syndrome, but they will hold off and make sure that every I is dotted and every T is crossed. And sometimes the folks around them may feel like they are paralyzed, that they are holding it up, they're the bottleneck. But it really is just because they're being conscientious. They are holding off and wanting to make sure things are 100% right. Now, the challenge with that and with other fears of being exposed is if it's paralyzing, if it keeps you stuck, if it keeps you in one place and you're not moving. So, if you've ever been in a place where you wanted to move, you thought about moving, you analyzed it, you thought it, you overthought it, you got an opinion, wrote it down, you theorized, you analyzed, and you realized that the window had passed. By the time you decided to do it, the time had passed. If that's you, say me in the comments. I know that I've had some times when I saw a position that I knew I could do in my sleep. I was passionate about it. I knew that I could take over from the person who left it. The person who left it was bored. It wasn't their strength. They didn't love it. They were just handed down and you could tell they were disengaged. And you all know that if you're not engaged in your work, the quality often suffers, right? So I saw this position and I knew I could do it, but I hesitated. I waited and I analyzed and I thought, and I didn't raise my hand. I didn't put my name in the ring. I didn't put my resume in. I didn't submit for it. And the position needed to be filled. And they filled it with someone who they were more passionate, but they weren't as skillful. And so inside, now I'm bitter. Now I'm frustrated. I'm mad at myself because I'm watching somebody else do what I can't wait to do. And then I'm like, well, why did you wait? Why did you pause? And I'm having this whole argument with myself. Has anybody ever done that? Overanalyzed to the point of paralysis? They say analysis paralysis. You're weighing the pros, you're weighing the cons. What happens if I do? What happens if I don't? What happens if they like what I submit? What happens if I get the job and then I realize there's more to it that I can't do? And by the time you stop analyzing it, the window's gone. So that was me. And so I'm very passionate about helping people understand when they are being a victim of their own imposter syndrome. So let's dig in and talk about and unpack what that looks like. So that could be an opportunity, that could be a promotion, that could be sitting around a table at a meeting and having the right answer, having the right words to say, having a great idea, but not sharing it. Now, there are sometimes some external factors, so we cannot ignore that. And we do know that some cultures are not really forgiving for new ideas. And listen, I worked in biotech slash pharma, and for a long time, it was the boys' club, to be honest. And a lot of times the projects were coming so hard and so fast that you just needed to go with it. And there wasn't time to add a new idea. There wasn't really a culture always that was open to new ideas or things that went against the grain. So I get it. That happens. But I want to encourage you and challenge you all at the same time that there are great ideas that are intrinsic just to you. You're the one that's supposed to bring them to the table. You're the one that's supposed to present them. And if you wait, you hold back on something great. And we don't get to have that innovative idea. We don't get to have that feedback. We don't get to have you as a leader or in the position that you could be in to help further the project, help further the company, the organization, the club, etc. So that's a lesson that I learned, some hard lessons that I learned, and realized that I was selling myself out. Yeah, I was like a traitor to myself by not stepping up and moving into ideas, opportunities, roles, positions, responsibilities that I could do in my sleep, that I could do, and they would have enhanced me, and I would have helped grow my team. I would have helped grow my department. I would have helped my company advance. So, if that's you, this is not about a guilt trip, but like I said, I am passionate about making sure that you do not fall in the same pit holes and pitfalls that I fell into. And I did for a season where I just did what was safe. I didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want to draw attention. I did what was required of me, nothing more, nothing less. What I do now, though, is I talk myself into it. And that's one of the first of 5 suggestions that I'm going to give you on how to overcome the imposter syndrome. First, you've got to identify that it's happening to you. So, hopefully, as some of the examples that I gave, you realize that maybe that's you. What I want you to do now is like take a minute, take 30 seconds and type in what you think are good indicators for imposter syndrome. I already said like not giving your idea at a meeting. Go ahead, take some time, write it in the comments and weigh in, guys, weigh in on each other's comments. Like it and say, hey, that was me, agree with it. The point of the imposter syndrome is to try to make sure you feel like you're alone. And I am here to tell you, you are not alone. And you can see by all of the comments that other people have felt that way, still feel that way, and will continue to feel that way. But this is all about exposure. We're shining a light on the imposter syndrome. And the first rule of the imposter syndrome is that you feel alienated, like you are the only one, that spotlight will be on you, that there will be a big focus on you, and that you may be embarrassed, you may be exposed. And so this is it. This is us saying the imposter syndrome has happened to almost all of us. Do you know that 70% of working adults have admitted to being impacted by the imposter syndrome at one point or another? Yeah. So you're not alone. So this is the thing. Once you've identified that it's you, I struggled, it's me, then I want to give you 5 tips on how to deal with that. And one is to understand that you're always talking to yourself, whether you realize it or not. And we make jokes and say, "Hey, if you see me talking to myself and then I start to answer, don't worry, we're having a staff meeting." Things like that. We make light of the inner monologue that we talk to ourselves. I know that if I want to remember something and I'm headed to the kitchen or I'm headed to another office or a meeting and I want to remember something, I may say it over and over so that my brain remembers it, kind of putting it in my short-term memory. Well, that's a trick that we tell ourselves and we give ourselves for good things, but really there is something going on in our inner critic, our inner voice. Our inner voice often says, "Oh, that was so stupid. I can't believe you did that again." And it doesn't use an external voice. It sounds a lot like you. Would you admit that it sounds just like you, like you feel like you're talking to yourself? But even when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the preservation of life, we don't innately want to harm ourselves. So that voice isn't necessarily coming from us or stemming from us. We're not born wanting to harm ourselves. That voice had to come from somewhere. So this is the first thing. I want you to investigate that inner critic. Who is that talking to you? I know it sounds like you, but where did the thoughts come from? And I know in therapy, they talk about triggers and things that if it happens, it sends you to a place, it causes you to react, it causes you to respond in a certain way, and it's almost a knee jerk reaction. That's because it's been practiced, it's habitual, it is something that's in there. So, where did it come from? Many of you may have a culture of where you grew up in your family that there was negative talk. Maybe you grew up in a culture where women didn't assert themselves, or where and I tell this story all the time. My husband's family culture and my family culture totally different. He laughs and jokes about it now, and he says that we could have an argument or a disagreement and then go to the mall and buy shoes like 15 minutes later. Whereas in his family, they didn't have those direct confrontational discussions. So total different culture. So what was the culture like where you grew up? Were you praised? Were you encouraged? Do you believe that you could do great things? Did you believe that growing up? Was that pushed? Was that spoken? Was it articulated? Some of you may have had the mom that did everything but cut your meat up and chew it for you. And I'm not making light of it, but I just have a friend that I remember we had to say, hey, he's got teeth now. You can, you know, you can let him do that himself. But sometimes our parents wanted to rescue us. And so when things got hard or things got tough, instead of letting us figure them out or fall or fail, they would fix it for us, do it for us. Does anybody have that experience? Did you have a fixer as a parent that didn't want to harm you and they thought they were helping, but what they did was they took away your problem solving skills and your confidence? And inadvertently, maybe you learned that if someone always has to do this for me, if someone always has to rescue me, then maybe I'm not fit to do that hard work. Maybe I don't have what it takes to figure it out. So that could have been a source of the inner critic. And you know this is too hard. You know you're going to fail. You know it's going to take you longer. Just let somebody else do it. They can get it done quicker. Work smarter, not harder. A lot of those things kind of come into play. But I want you to investigate the voice of your inner critic. Who is talking to you? Who is telling you that you can't do it? Who is saying that you are not good enough? Who is it and where did it come from? And so you have to do some soul searching. You have to think about, when did I start hearing that I can't do it? Was it when you fell off your bike at 7? Some of these are so deep rooted that you might need to talk to somebody. You might need a coach. When I'm coaching folks that are dealing with the imposter syndrome, we go way back and we talk about childhood. We talk about wins. We talk about failures and losses and what the voices in their village said, what it felt like. And we go back and do some healing work. And it's important for you to do that, even if it's forgiving yourself for dropping the ball, forgiving yourself for messing up, and then pump yourself up and get back in the game. So, the first point, investigate your inner critic. Whose voice is that? Where did it come from? Get to the root and uproot it. If it's really, really deep rooted and you need to have therapy, go grab you a coach, grab you a therapist. And as your coach, I'm telling you, journal this thing out, write it down. Where did it come from? Where did you start doubting yourself? Who was it that told you that you couldn't? And ever since then, you haven't. Because we've been waiting to see your greatness. We've been waiting to hear your genius, and you've been holding it back. So don't be selfish. Investigate the voice of the inner critic. And number two, drown it out. Drown out the voice of your inner critic. And that's with affirmations. Tell yourself how great you are. Now, we're going to come back to affirmations because I need to do two more. We're going to talk about celebrating wins, and then we're also going to talk about analyze the data. And then we'll go back to affirmations. So you've got to analyze the data. Okay. And some of you, when you see the data, when you see the numbers, it's a no brainer. This is the decision I should make. The data points there. My gut might be telling me something else, but the data says otherwise. So, for those of you that are like that, I want you to go with the data. And what do I mean by that? What do people say that you're good at? And you might need to take a poll. Take a poll of your friends. Take a poll of your past coworkers. What did I do well? What do you see in me that I may not see in myself? And if you're really, really bold and courageous, ask them, what do you see in me that you think I don't see in myself? What are some strengths that I may not even know I have? Go ahead and ask that question, because you know what that does? It starts to give you data. It starts to give you areas where people are saying XYZ about you. They're giving you accolades. And then if more than three people say the same thing, that's a data point. That's like significant. It's statistically significant. When you see that overwhelmingly you are getting kudos in certain areas, you can chalk those up to a win. And there's a reason why we're doing this. It is because the imposter syndrome thrives off of negative data. The imposter syndrome thrives off of falsities, half truths, or old news, old failures. You've grown so far past that, but you're stuck. Is that you? So I want you to check the data. Ask people, what am I good at? What do you see in me? What are my strengths? And what are things that you believe are my strengths, but you think I don't know yet? You are going to be surprised when you do that. So that's the assignment. How many of you are willing to do the assignment? If you're willing to do the assignment, say, I'll do it. This is only if you want to know the data. Ask people that you trust to give you honest feedback. Listen, if you want to get better, you may have to ask somebody that you may think they're going to give you what you don't want to hear. But if you want to get better, you're going to need to get some data that you need to hear, whether you want to hear it or not. Because there may be some blind spots, because this is getting unstuck with me, Coach Katina. So sometimes we get stuck because there are blind spots that we have no idea that we have. So you would want somebody to tell you, right? So picture this. So I'm at a networking event and I've got spinach in my teeth and I am making connections after connection. I am talking and I am excited and I'm having a great time. But at my sixth person, I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror and there's spinach in my teeth. Now I'm starting to doubt, how much quality did I get out of those interactions? Now I got it, but what were they thinking about me, right? Did I limit myself? Did I put a shadow or cast a negative view on how I showed up? How did I show up to these people, right? And there's spinach in my teeth. So now I rush to the bathroom and I fix it. And then I have to decide, do I go out there and present as if that never happened? Or do I go out there and act like I still have spinach in my teeth and I'm ashamed to talk to anybody? What's my point? I have 2 points there. One, you would have wished somebody told you before you had those great interactions, right? Now your confidence is down because you're exposed to a weakness or a blind spot, something you didn't know about. So, one, you wish somebody would have told you, but now that they told you, you feel a little less confident. This is when you brush your teeth and you go right back out there to that party, because guess what? With or without the spinach in your teeth, you still have great things to present. You are still a great person to interact with. You still have great ideas. You still bring something to the table. It's with or without the blind spot. So you handle the blind spot and you get back in the game. How many of you have had that happen to you? Not the spinach, but the proverbial spinach or the hypothetical spinach. How many of you had a blind spot that somebody needed to pull your coattail on? And once you adjusted, you immediately saw the difference. And maybe it wasn't immediate. Maybe it took a while for people to adjust to your new norm, but you saw the difference. Is that you? Put a one in the chat if that was you. So listen, we're talking about the data. What are people saying about you? What are the blind spots? What are the strengths? Read the data. Handle your blind spots. Get over it and move on. What are the blind spots? Get over it, move on. I in my book, It's Time to Soar, one of the blind spots I talk about is I was stuck on being right. Um, I won't go into where it came from, but I had to search that out for me. I had an issue where when I was younger, I was told I was wrong a lot. So, in order to prove myself, I felt like everywhere I went, I had to prove myself. So, I was stuck on being right. And I would clear the energy in a room like you would not believe because I just needed to get my point out. When I realized that that was a negative anchor from my past, I went back and I did the healing work. I did the work. I forgave myself. I forgave those people that didn't listen. And I talked myself, I affirmed myself right back into the game. So look at the data. What are they saying? What are you great at? What are you good at? What are things that you might not be able to see that might be hindering you? And what are things that you might not see that are great? Read the data and go with it. If you happen to get some feedback that you don't love, fix it and move on. All right. So the first thing I said to do was what? Type it in chat. Do you remember? Yeah, of course. Identify that it's you with the imposter syndrome. But the first thing is to investigate that voice of the inner critic. Second, read the data, find the data, find out what people are saying. What are they saying about you? The good stuff. And number three, celebrate those wins. Listen, they are telling you great things about you. I want you to celebrate every single one of them. How do you do that? That's a great question. And I'm going to tell you. I want you to talk to yourself. If you need to look in the mirror, some of you look in the mirror. Listen, we take selfies all day. Take a selfie saying, you crushed that presentation. You did great. Remember that time you jumped in and the team was so far behind and you fixed the numbers, you crunched the numbers and you got it in on time. Remember that time you had that great answer in class. Remember that time that you helped your cohort win the presentation competition. Remember that time. I want you to remember and I want you to celebrate. Listen, I don't know, take yourself out for ice cream or tell somebody about it. Hashtag winning. I want you to really celebrate. And it seems so lame sometimes because you're not used to celebrating yourself. But I am here to throw you a party. I'm telling you, you did great. Great job. Kudos to you. Great job. Bravissimo. Mwah. Chef's kiss. I am telling you, you're not doing that to yourself and for yourself enough. So now that you've asked and you've gotten the data, number three is celebrate your wins. No matter how big or how small, celebrate your wins and own it. Well, I had a lot of help. Yep, you had a lot of help, and you were a driving force or a participating force. They couldn't have done it without you. Celebrate that. I had a piece of the team effort. I did great. Kudos to me. Celebrate your wins. All right. That's number three. I said we'd get back to the affirmations. As you're celebrating your wins, I want you to line up that feedback and let it become your affirmation. I was created with great ideas. I'm a problem solver. I'm a great addition to the team. I am a good mediator. Sometimes you can help people interpret other people. You can be the middle person, you can be the mediator. These are all wins, but you need to remind yourself. Why remind yourself? And remind yourself out loud. You know, a little hack that I do a voice recording. I can set it to an alarm and the alarm goes off. And in my own voice, it says, Katina, you are awesome. You're incredible. You've got great ideas. You've got great creative energy. When you come into a room, the energy is so happy and positive that people do their best thinking. They do their best working. They do their best collaborations. You bring something to the table. Go ahead and say that about yourself because you do, because you absolutely do. And when you say that to yourself, you begin to believe it. And when you begin to believe it, you begin to behave like you believe it. And that energy follows you into a room. That light follows you into the room. And you know what? People are attracted to that light. So when there's an opportunity, when there's a group, when there's a team, and you might have no idea what you're going to do on that team. I don't even think I'm a fit, but they want you. Why? Because you've got greatness in you and it's time for it to come out. So that's number 4. So we said, once you've identified that you've got the imposter syndrome, you've got to go ahead, investigate that inner critic, analyze the data, asking for feedback, celebrate your wins, and then verbalize and vocalize your wins, your traits, your characteristics, because that is going to drown out the voice of the inner critic. Some things I want you to do as far as resisting. The inner critic and the imposter syndrome really wants you to be isolated and be by yourself. But I want you to be confident enough to reach out to someone to help you with this. Reach out to them and say, listen, I'm struggling in this area. If I could be transparent, and I want you to help me. Now, that could be a coworker, that could be a colleague, that could be a friend. You can play back a conversation, play forward a conversation. You know what I mean by that? Listen, I don't know if anybody's like me, but sometimes I just talk before I thought it through. That's my natural bent. So if I get somebody to bounce off my idea or my thoughts, they might say, "Hey, that might not come off the way you want." So you bounce an idea off of them, you get your confidence up, you get your verbiage together, you practice how it's going to sound, and you don't own whether they receive it or not, but you package it in a way that it's as receivable as you can possibly transmit it. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, say yes in the comments. If I can help you with that, isolation will keep you silent to yourself and in cycles. It's time to break that cycle. And I want you to trust someone with this vulnerability that I don't think I belong. And if it's a coworker and you just kind of want them to hear your ideas and your thoughts and to kind of be in your corner, like, yeah, you can do it. You can do it. You've got that meeting at 12. I'm rooting for you. You can do it. We've practiced. You got this. That's great. And then as your coach, I coach people all the time and it's not a one and done. So we have to practice behaviors. We have to come up with solutions, make a game plan, follow through, and then follow up. So you need a good coach. You need a good coach. And if it's really, really deep seated and deep rooted, then I would say grab a therapist. The stigma on therapy, I hope, is gone because talking to it, talking about it to somebody who is skilled, knowledgeable, certified, credentialed to help you unpackage mental trauma, mental abuse, and things like that that might have kept you paralyzed, you getting it out is so much healthier than you holding it in. Listen, we're breaking cycles here. So, a coworker, a coach, a therapist, get it out so that you can silence the voice of that inner critic. You can read the data and say, I am great. I am amazing. I am confident. I am creative. I bring great ideas to the table. I articulate well. I'm a people person. For those of you that might not be people persons quite yet, listen. Go ahead and say what you need to say. Say it out loud. Say it daily. Listen, marketing. How many of you have bought something because you've seen a commercial more than once? If you only saw the commercial if you only saw the commercial once, what's the likelihood of you buying it? What's the likelihood of you finding it? What's the likelihood of you remembering it? It's slim to none, right? So what do they do when they're creating commercials and ads? They bombard you so that your brain consumes it so that it's second nature. Make sure you consume how great you are. Say it out loud so your ears hear it. Say it out loud so that you practice saying it. Say it out loud so that your brain begins to remember it, not just in your short term, but in your long term memory. Go ahead and tell yourself how great you are. because you are. And the world is waiting to hear your ideas. The world is waiting to sit at the table with you. Listen, a seat's been cleared for you at the table. I don't know why you're waiting to sit down. Sit down. You know why you're there? Because you deserve it. You know why you're there? Because of your body of work. You know why you're there. You're also there to grow. So stop saying that you can't. You get there, and everything that you can will help build you to what you can. You're going to inspire coworkers. You're going to inspire colleagues. You're going to inspire your clients. If you would open your mouth and just be your authentic self, you are going to draw to you people that will collaborate with you, help your ideas be better, take you to the next level, and you will drown out that voice that says you don't belong. The seat's been prepared at the table, and it's been prepared because your greatness precedes you. So I need you to commit with me that you are ready to break the cycle of the imposter syndrome. Everybody that remembers all of the steps, can you type them in the chat? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go ahead. And once those are there, I want you to take it a step further and really commit. Which of the steps are you willing to take? Are you willing to be intentional about so that you can break this cycle and give the world your incredible, creative, analytical, quirky, wonderful, authentic self? Did you write them down? You want me to go back over them? Listen, I said it 4 times, but it was for repetition. Silence the voice of that inner critic by understanding where it came from. Number 2, analyze the data. Ask people what they think of you. Celebrate those wins and let those wins become your affirmations. Say that to yourself over and over and over again, over and over and over again. And then be intentional and reach out, seek help. Don't isolate. Be intentional about finding someone to confide in that will help you and help keep you accountable on breaking this cycle. Listen, if this helped you, let me know in the chat, and also commit. Be accountable to the community. Type in what you're going to work on, what you're going to be intentional about. I'm excited to see you win. I'm excited to hear your wins. You can visit me at www.katinachristmasrobertson.com. Shoot me a note. Let me know what your wins are, what you liked about the pod, what your challenges are. And hey, if we work together, you can go ahead and let me know that you want to work with me. But listen, the bottom line is I don't want you stuck because I've been thinking about you. And you know what I think? I think it's time for you to soar. I hope you enjoyed this episode of It's Time to Soar podcast. I'm your coach, Coach Katina, and I can't wait to watch you soar to new heights. Let's soar together. Thank you for joining this episode of It's Time to Soar podcast. This episode was all about overcoming the imposter syndrome. I sure hope it helped you. If you have friends that you think will benefit from this episode, share it with them. And have you already liked and subscribed to the podcast? If not, do so and make sure you've got the notifications on so that you know when the new episodes load. I can't wait to soar with you. Hey, you, I was thinking about you.